shop. And I'm like, this guy knows something about insurance, man. I better be on top of my game when if he's sitting in the audience. And so, man, it was a great pleasure having you there. Eugene, what I'd like for you to do, man, just tell us a little bit about your background, little bit about who you are, and also tell us a little bit about this movement at New York Life, why you did it, and just kind of share with us from your heart right now. And then we can get into the particulars of the book. But I want to hear from the man.
Sure. I appreciate it. And thank you for the introduction. Thank you for reading from the book. I got to put one more acknowledgement on there before I get in trouble later tonight. I got first acknowledged and thanked my wife, Mecca, for her time and support and belief in me. And I believe this is, the strength of what I have and where I'm going. Like I said, the God-given purpose. That the family unit is so important in that, and have the strength of a partner like her, and like I know many of us have.
And she's first.
She's first. No, I'm just saying.
She's first. Don't get me in trouble, man. I don't want you having to sleep in your office there.
Thank you. Thank you. No, but it's really an honor and a pleasure to be here. I am Eugene Mitchell, President and CEO of E. Mitchell Enterprises, which is a financial literacy and a financial services company. I'm also the author of now the book, Closing the Racial Wealth Gap, 7 Untold Rules for Black Prosperity and Legacy. And really the inspiration for both the book and starting my own company here came from the 17 years that I worked at New York Life Insurance Company, a Fortune 100 company in this great country of ours. And I got to sit in a privileged position amongst the other cultural marketing groups, Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, Hispanic, and Indian markets especially. But I got to watch what the general market was doing and what the Jewish community and others were doing to create wealth for themselves and their families in ways that I realized we've not been taught in the Black community, or we don't know or haven't been doing the same way to put us on the same level that they have. And so really that inspired me over the years to really find out more. And the book really is sort of this chronology of sort of starting from where the light bulb went on for me in sort of what I had been missing, what I've not been taught, but then also what I've been able to bring to my family, then to empower the agents with, and then we've brought to the community. I loved everything that you guys had said in the beginning, in this opening here, in that, we are starting from behind as a Black community. And really, that's where my passion and my love and my intention has been over the years, to make sure that we are brought up to speed and put on par with everybody else. But I think you said it, Tony, we've not been given all the rules. And without having all the rules to play the rules of to play the game, it's like if you were playing a card game or a board game or a sports game. If you don't know all the rules, how can you be expected to keep up, let alone get ahead of anybody else? And so that's part of where I was going with the intention of this book, to make sure and share the rules that I've seen others using that we've been missing. I also want to acknowledge that I think Marlon said about sort of the information and understanding the intention of the information. Because it's not that we haven't been given things to do. Much of it has been the wrong things to do. Where I'm going, we've been distracted by symbols of wealth. We've been following social media and the reality TV and the athletes and the entertainers and things that they've been doing, thinking that's what we need to aspire to. And that doesn't help move us to the next level in times like this. I was talking to you earlier, Tony, about my you talk about from the heart, my concern of where we are now with this COVID-19, in that this is a deadly, around the deadly nature of this disease in our community, and that we have to really come together to properly cover and protect our finances as a family and as a community. Because it's not only going to be this COVID-19, that this is just the current pandemic, the current issue, the current challenge that we have, that there's going to be a COVID-20, a COVID-21, 22, or whatever they're going to call it. We're going to have, as Marlon said, the recession of the early 2000s, the 2008. At my age now, I realize things are cyclical in the economy. It's going to be up and going to be down. So as far and as much as we focus on trying to be successful, we also have to put right up there making sure that we can weather storms like these to get to the next level. See, I just think about how many of those, and I was sharing with you earlier, Tony, of the 60,000 lives that have been lost now, as tragic as that is in our country, 60,000 lost, and we know that a majority or a significant number of those, an outweighted number of those are from the Black community. So say if it's 20%, that'd be 12,000 people in our community that have been lost. I want us to think about and make sure that we're providing for those families, not only that are grieving, but they are set up to be better and to be able to continue in their livelihoods, their establishment, and in their lives after those people are gone. And so that's a concern to me. And the passion is heightened on the use of this tool, that the company that I came from, in how that we can make sure that we're ensuring ourselves to ensure the future. That's number two of the rules, to position ourselves, but that we're also learning the best practices. Not that we have to be like anybody else, but we need to learn best practices for ourselves to make sure that we are not only be able to recover from these type of pandemics and crisis moments, but we can take advantage of opportunities in these times. See, as I'm sure as you did, you were watching the news when they said the stock market was coming down, and it got down to 18,000, and folks were talking about this a time to buy. There are people out there that have positioned themselves now to take advantage of opportunities. That as people are losing homes, they have to close and shut up businesses, that they can step in to take over. This is what I think Marlon was talking about, making sure that we have an action plan, a plan in place. The plan has to be, like I said, to get wealthy, to make sure that we're doing it correctly, that we're providing for the storms that are coming, and that we can position for opportunities. Really, I think that's the definition of wealth for me. Wealth is, the technical term, the assets minus the liabilities. Your home, your 401k, your investments, minus all the debts, the mortgage, the credit cards, the bills, the associated liabilities and loans to those. And what's left over, this pool that we pull from there is really your wealth. That's the net worth, your wealth. Because from that pool, you can take advantage of opportunities, and then you can adequately recover from emergencies. That's why I really put the time and effort into writing this book, because I want us to understand from where we came and understand what it is that we need to do to make sure that we're maximizing that wealth, because that's what I realize other communities around us have been focused on for so long. I want to touch on, because in the book I go through the cause of the wealth gap, and I know people wrote in and you guys mentioned some things there. What I've chalked it up is two contributing factors. You've got past contributing factors, and then you've got current contributing factors. Of the past contributors to the wealth gap, of course, you had 246 years of slavery. You had 100 years of Jim Crow. You had all the setbacks. You're talking about the white supremacy. Somebody wrote in, absolutely, that kept the discriminatory lending practices, the GI Bill, that we didn't get the same access to college and loans, right? You have mass incarceration. You've had all these systemic issues, governmental issues that have made sure to keep the Black community behind. And so we are starting from behind, and those, I would say, are the past contributors. And so I wholeheartedly support and agree with the politicians, especially this year, as they started to talk about reparations and making good on that debt that is owed to our ancestors and to all of those who went before us, who were caught up in those practices that let them and made them become behind. We have to make sure that stays in place, and that we're focused on making sure that is made up and taken care of. But I also agree with Marlon that there's a personal accountability and responsibility that we have to take on today. And in the book, I talk about 5 current contributors to the wealth gap. And when I think about our plan, what we're doing to make sure that they're working towards those 5 particular things. The first would be home ownership. So for most families in America, the home is the largest wealth asset that we have. When the white community has 72% home ownership and we have 40%, that alone is putting us on a different path. So we have to do what we can, and in the book, and I'll talk about it as we continue the Q&A as we go through the different chapters. What can we do? How are we making sure that we are starting and moving towards owning property? Because that will then become our greatest asset. There's that asset that you can borrow from, those home equity loans, that when times like this, when we get furloughed, when we get laid off, that you can get other income streams to tap into to make sure that you can pay the bills and you're not set too far behind. The second contributor, current contributor, I have to say, is the annual median income between the average white family and the average black family. And so we know there's an income gap, right, between the white families and the black families. But I talk about in the book other income streams that we can create for ourselves, right? So we don't have to be solely dependent and reliant on that one job that we have to go to, that we have no option because we're essential workers, because we can't work from home, that we have to go to. Are there other income streams? And I talk about that in the book. The third is our unemployment rate. The disparity there, the 11% for the black community versus the 5-6% for the white community, is huge. And I talk about and have partnered with along the way of this $50 billion campaign to help support Black-owned businesses towards really creating success for them, making them become more and increasing our spend with them, because as they become more successful, they will likely hire more Black individuals that can impact our unemployment rate. The fourth contributing factor is our college education rate and our skills, the trade skills that we learn. That we have to make sure that if we're not going the path of college, that we are learning skills, that we can make a salary, that we can become entrepreneurs, that we can build our own business and become on par in the way of the employment and the income of everybody else. And then the fifth area is the family support and inheritance. Now, this is really the crux of my life's work, and where this $50 billion community empowerment plan that I created and we completed after 6.5 years came from. In watching how other communities set themselves up in the way of inheritance for the next generation. And for me and where I came from, it was done primarily in the way of using life insurance. Where we talk about misinformation, I realized many in the Black community have only ever been taught that life insurance is about covering the cost of the funeral. And this goes back from the Black insurance companies to the debit agents, those white agents that would come to the house to take a dollar or two from Big Mama years ago. They talked about giving her a great home going, but it was never about leaving the family better off, setting them up for the next level. And that's what I realized the other communities were doing, those other cultures that I sat next to were doing, right? So in incorporating some of this for ourselves, I created the $50 billion community empowerment plan, which was a vision that was supposed to create a different conversation and intention for the tool of life insurance. Let's look to get 200,000 African Americans out of 43 million to see the value of owning at least $250,000 of life insurance. 200,000 people with $250,000 of life insurance will create $50 billion of protection. But as long as we keep it in force, by the time we pass, if that is in force, it will get paid to the next generation. 200,000 times 250,000 will create $50 billion of tax-free future income, because life insurance passes tax-free. You talk about the rules we don't know. There's a key one there. Your home, your investments, your retirement, everything will be taxed when it passes to your children, but your life insurance is not. So think about what that means to create $50 billion for our community. That's just on 200,000 families. So think about the friends, the families, and the businesses of 200,000 African Americans. What can't we do with $50 billion, right? So this is millions, hopefully we're creating individually for families, billions collectively. Now we can talk about steering those billions to making sure that we support our Black-owned businesses. Think about 50 billion being siphoned and channeled through Black businesses, back to the Black church, right? Back to the organizations and institutions that we love, the charitable giving, the endowments that we create. So this was just one campaign using this tool that I've seen others do. And it took us 6.5 years, those 1,500 Black financial advisors that I led at New York Life, but we got the job done. There's no more than 50 billion on the books now at New York Life for the Black community by the Black agents. And so the whole movement and mission now is to move that to the next level and to continue to learn these strategies and these tools that in ways that they're being used by others that we haven't been doing. A quick one that I love to share, just because I'm here and I know you're coming in now, Tony. One in where I live here in Brooklyn, right? They would say that Jewish family across the way from you there, they take out $1 million of insurance on the two oldest in the family. And in that family of 30, the 18 others would make the payments on it. Let me say that again. Take out $2 million on the two oldest, and the other 18 will make the payments on it. And in their mind, it wasn't about profiting off the death of grandma and grandpa. And that's never, ever where I'm talking about what we're needing to do or think about. And that's not where they are. They're looking to hold them up as the matriarch and the patriarch, because from that $2 million, they will pay for the college education of all those children and grandchildren, right? They'll give them the startup capital to start their own businesses. And key to where we are in New York City and many of these city and urban areas, they're giving them the down payments for the homes. How do you get $1 million brownstone, $2 million brownstone? How do you get 20% down? You and I, Tony, are likely not going to earn 20% down to put down on $1 million brownstone. But when grandma passes and she gives 200,000 there and 200,000 there, we can buy 2 brownstones. But let's have 3 or 4 floors. We can have rental income off of those. This is the use of tools. That's what I'm saying, understanding the strategies that others have been using that we've not been taught. So many of us are so smart, you know, oh, I know what that is. I know what the stocks are. I know what investments are. I know what life insurance is. But are we understanding how others are using it in ways that we are not, or no, have not been taught? That's where my passion comes from there, Tom.
Wow, Eugene. I mean, normally we take a 30-second break, but we ain't got time for no 30-second break, man. We got to keep rolling. You know, it's interesting, and I'm just gonna put this out there. You talk about reparations, and one of the things that just when this CARES Act and stimulus came out, and they said everyone's going to get $1,200, and man, that happened quick. But when you start talking about reparations, there's like, well, we don't know how to do it. We don't know how we're going to do it. Where's the money going to come from? It's a matter of priorities.
That's right.
And that's really, I wanted to just say that. And, you know, perhaps that's something we'll talk about on a future show.
Yes,
but wow, this is awesome information. And you said so much there, man, in terms of, you know, how we can pass from generation to generation and it be passed tax-free. You know, one of the things I wanted to, as we unpack some of the 7 rules, one of the things in here that you talked about in terms of knowing your worth. Knowing your worth was rule number 1.
Yes, sir.
And you talked about even slave owners had insurance policies on slaves.
Yes.
And what I love about what you said there is that if you were to that in present dollar figure, what would that look like today?
Right. So I always say that we're multi-million-dollar assets to ourselves and our families, right? I think the example I gave was a slave owner. There's been donations to the Schomburg Center here in New York City, the public library here, of some of the original slave policies. And they were taking out $500 on the life of an acclimated slave. So acclimated mean they're following directions, that they were basically broken and trained to do what they were supposed to do, but $500 on their life. And to your point, if you multiply that over the last 400 years, that's well in excess of $2 million that they recognize our value to be, right? As the contribution to what we do, not for what we buy, not for what we consume, but what we can produce, what we could build, being contributors. And so where I go in the book is understanding our value and our worth as leaders and contributors and builders for our families and our community. And understanding that a similar calculation you could do today is to say, if I earn $50,000 a year and were to do that for 20 years, That's $1 million. And so if you earn more, you will work longer, that's multi-millions that you will earn in your time. So doesn't that make you a multi-million-dollar asset? If you don't make it home tomorrow, right, that means there will be millions of dollars that your family won't receive. But when you talk about another black man getting shot, another one going to jail, we talked about the Black Lives Matter. Yes, they matter. But I was asking the question, what's a black life worth? Right? Because once you start recognizing your value and your worth, I'm hoping that we're going to start talking and treating our own selves differently, then have a different expectation of how others will take care of us, but also that we'll put something in place to make sure that if anything does happen, that the family won't be missing that $1 million. You talk about 1 million black men in prison, in jail, that's 1 million black men not making $1 million over the next 20 years. Think about the impact that has in our community, man.
Right. Absolutely. And then not to mention how hard it is, when those things are happening to sometimes get insured and that type of thing. Yeah. And so it really just brings to the point that, that $25,000, $50,000 policy, we're worth much, much, much more than that. Right. Much more than that. And in Rule 2, you're talking about insure yourself, insure your future. But I want to get down to Rule 3 because we don't have time to go through each one.
Say again?
So Rule 3. We have the wealth pyramid in Rule 3. And the Rule 3 says this: you can't earn your way to wealth. Unpack that just for a minute for us.
Sure, man. So if I may, though, just because I think it ties into this COVID situation and conversation, to insure yourself to ensure the future, right? If we said could be 10,000, 20,000 African Americans have passed away because of COVID just over this last month. Like you just said, if we talked about if those individuals were insured, would say that $250,000 was the target for the campaign that we had. That would be 10,000 people with $250,000 of insurance would create $2.5 billion going back to those families that have been left now. So think about the grieving, the triumph. So not only the tragedy, but the triumph in that tragedy, because the families could go on, right? That they could pay the bills, that they would be able to make sure that the kids could go on to college, that the widow or the widower could grieve properly. That I just think, and want us to now, before we move on, think about the risk that we all face if we have higher health issues, conditions, if we're in these emergency jobs, if we are unable to distance, then we have to buy life insurance now for our families. We are at a higher risk. I want to put that out there before we move on, because I think this is the protection and the foundation that we have to build from. If the head of the household or somebody doesn't make it home tomorrow, if we die because of COVID over the next 2-3 months, the impact on the family is going to be significant, right? And if you get the disease, you will be uninsurable. So now is the time to do it. You can buy a cheap term policy, for 5 years or 10 years. If you do $50,000 for a $500,000 policy, $100 for $1 million policy. I just want to put it up there in this conversation today. The time that I want everybody to buy a life insurance policy and get your risk taken care of. If we have a higher risk in the Black community, let's cover the risk and make sure the insurance companies make sure to pay us off in case anything happens to us. I just want to throw that.
You're so right, because I tell people this all the time.